Why do some rulers hold their throne effortlessly, while others collapse under the weight of their own crown? The answer is not found in armies or wealth. It lies in something far more subtle, yet far more dangerous emotional intelligence. A ruler who cannot master his own emotions becomes a slave to them. Anger blinds, fear paralyzes, and pride destroys. But the one who controls his emotions bends reality itself. His silence breeds fear. His smile disarms suspicion, and his calculated displays of empathy turn enemies into pawns. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this truth. The strongest ruler is not the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who manipulates feelings, both his own and those of everyone around him. Emotional intelligence is not kindness. It is a mask, a weapon, a throne invisible to the eye yet undeniable to the soul. Power is not tested on the battlefield alone. It is tested in the silent moments, when anger tempts you to explode, when fear whispers in your ear, or when arrogance pushes you to act recklessly. Many rulers throughout history have lost everything, not because their armies were weak, but because they themselves were slaves to their emotions. A ruler who cannot command his own heart can never hope to command the hearts of others. Think of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Surrounded by war betrayal and the weight of an empire, he practiced restraint. He was a man who ruled not through loud decrees, but through quiet mastery of himself. When enemies sought to provoke him, he did not respond with rage. Instead, he absorbed the storm, turning composure into an aura of invincibility. Ask yourself, would you trust a leader who panics at the first sign of trouble, or one who appears untouchable even in chaos? Now compare that to rulers undone by their own lack of discipline. Consider Caligula, whose uncontrollable bursts of rage and paranoia dragged Rome into chaos. His inability to master himself led others to fear him, but fear without respect breeds only plots and daggers. His downfall was not the result of external enemies, but the collapse of his inner kingdom. In the end, he was murdered by his own guards, a victim not of Rome's rivals, but of his own emotions. This is the first lesson of emotional intelligence self-mastery. Anger, fear, envy, pride. These are the true assassins of rulers. They strike from within, invisible and relentless. When a ruler succumbs to them, every decision becomes clouded, every judgment tainted. But when he holds the leash tightly, emotions transform into tools. Anger can be restrained until it is needed as a weapon. Fear can be hidden to lull enemies into false confidence. Pride can be masked with humility until the moment of triumph. Niccolò Machiavelli hinted at this in The Prince. He argued that while it is better to be feared than loved, it is fatal to appear unstable. Fear works only when it is controlled, when it does not cross into madness. A ruler who lashes out unpredictably will inspire not loyalty, but rebellion. Emotional control is what separates a tyrant who reigns for decades from one who is cut down in the night. But here lies the paradox. People expect rulers to show emotion. They want a leader who appears human, who can inspire comfort and connect. Emotional intelligence does not mean becoming cold stone. It means knowing precisely when and how to reveal emotion. A single tear at a funeral can bind a nation. A measured tone of anger can ignite an army. The ruler is like an actor upon the grandest stage, and emotions are his lines. Yet the difference between a king and a fool is this: the king chooses his lines carefully, while the fool lets the script control him. Ask yourself in your own life, how often have you been manipulated by someone who appeared calm while you were consumed by rage? Did their calmness not make your anger look foolish? That is the secret weapon of rulers. By mastering themselves, they force others to lose control. Emotional equilibrium becomes a silent form of dominance. And so we see the first principle: he who masters himself rules others effortlessly. The ruler who commands his own emotions transforms silence into intimidation, patience into strategy, and restraint into strength. The battlefield may be won with swords, but the throne is kept with composure. But emotional intelligence does not stop at self-mastery. Controlling yourself is only the beginning. The greater power lies in understanding and controlling the emotions of others. After all, what use is your calmness if you cannot detect the storm brewing in someone else's heart? If self-control is the shield of a ruler, then the ability to read others is his sword. Emotional intelligence is not simply about calming yourself. It is about seeing into the hidden corners of human hearts. Every courtier, soldier's advisor, and rival carries within them a set of emotions: fear, greed, jealousy, ambition. Most leaders fail because they treat people as if they are rational. But people are not rational. They are emotional, impulsive, and easily swayed. The ruler who can read emotions can predict actions before they happen, turning potential threats into predictable moves on a chessboard. Consider Queen Elizabeth I of England. Surrounded by plots, rival nations, and a restless court, she survived not because she had the largest army, but because she had an extraordinary ability to read her people. She could sense the ambitions of her nobles, play rival factions against one another, and recognize the precise moment to show mercy or wrath. Her court became a theater, and she the master director. Was this mere luck? No, it was the cold precision of emotional intelligence, the capacity to perceive others' motives before they dared to reveal them. Now contrast her mastery with rulers blinded by arrogance. Take Louis XVI of France. He misread the hunger and fury of the people. He saw them as a nuisance rather than a storm-gathering force. His inability to sense their rage left him powerless when the revolution erupted. Where Elizabeth bent emotions to her will, Louis ignored them, and the guillotine answered his blindness. The lesson is simple to ignore. The emotions of others is to rule blindly, like a general charging into battle with his eyes closed. Emotional intelligence and strategy requires listening, not just to words, but to tone, hesitation, posture, silence. A trembling voice can reveal fear. A forced smile can expose envy. A glance across a room can betray an alliance. Machiavelli would advise that such details are not trivial, they are weapons. The prince who notices the nervous twitch in his rival's eye knows when to strike. The king who sees the silent resentment in his advisor's face knows when betrayal is brewing. Ask yourself, how many times in your own life have you missed an opportunity because you failed to notice what someone was really feeling? A friend hides resentment. A colleague masks ambition. A rival pretends loyalty. Those who fail to see emotions at play are always at the mercy of others. But the one who perceives them, he becomes untouchable. History is full of examples. Julius Caesar understood this well. He knew how to charm the people with generosity while quietly reading the insecurities of the Senate. He played emotions like an instrument, offering banquets, games, and spectacles to capture the crowd's adoration. At the same time, he studied the envy of senators, exploiting their divisions until his power was unshakable. In the end, it was not only his military genius, but his emotional perception that elevated him above all rivals. But perception alone is not enough. Reading emotions is only the first step. The true art lies in using that knowledge. Once you know someone's fear, you can amplify it. Once you detect their desire, you can exploit it. Once you uncover their insecurity, you can control them. Emotional intelligence in this sense is not soft empathy. It is ruthless insight. It is the ability to look into someone's soul, identify their weakness, and then decide whether to comfort it or to weaponize it. This is why emotional intelligence is so dangerous. Most imagine it as kindness as being sensitive, but in the hands of a ruler, it becomes something else entirely, a tool of manipulation. To read another's emotions is to strip them naked to see them more clearly than they see themselves. And once you hold that vision, they are no longer free. They move as you wish, think as you suggest, act as you design. So the second principle is this: he who reads the hearts of others rules their actions. A ruler who can perceive emotion becomes a puppeteer, invisible strings tied to every subject, every rival, every ally. To the blind, life is chaos. To the emotionally intelligent, it is a script already written. But reading emotions is not the end game. The true Machiavellian secret lies deeper, not only sensing what others feel, but deciding what they see in you. Which mask will you wear? Which emotions will you allow to escape? That is the next step, the art of masking your true intentions, while showing only what serves your rule. If reading emotions gives you insight into others, then masking your own gives you control over yourself. And control over yourself is the foundation of controlling how others perceive you. A ruler without a mask is a ruler exposed, vulnerable, predictable, and easily manipulated. But the ruler who wears his emotions like armor, who reveals only what he chooses, becomes untouchable. He can present calm when chaos burns within, or kindness when he plots ruthlessness. This is not hypocrisy. It is strategy. Throughout history, the most effective rulers were not those who revealed their inner thoughts, but those who concealed them with precision. Napoleon Bonaparte, for example, often stood before his men on the eve of battle, appearing calm and unshaken. In reality, he was consumed by calculations, doubts, and uncertainty. Yet to reveal that uncertainty would have been fatal. His soldiers saw only composure, and from that illusion, they drew courage. Imagine if he had revealed panic instead. How quickly would his army's confidence have crumbled? A ruler's mask is not simply for protection. It is a weapon that shapes the emotions of others. Machiavelli himself advised that it is not necessary for a prince to truly possess all virtues, but it is essential to appear as if he does. People are deceived by appearances far more easily than they are guided by truth. If a ruler appears merciful, generous, or righteous, most will never question the act. They see the performance, not the reality, and the performance is all that matters. Ask yourself, do people care more about what you truly are or about what they believe you to be? The danger lies in the opposite approach, rulers who expose too much. Consider King Richard II of England. Known for his volatile displays of anger and despair, he showed his true emotions freely. Rather than appearing strong, he appeared unstable. Rather than inspiring loyalty, he inspired distrust. His inability to mask his feelings gave his enemies a blueprint of his weaknesses, and they used those weaknesses to overthrow him. By being transparent, he signed his own death warrant. The art of masking true intentions is at its core psychological warfare. When others cannot read you, they become uncertain, and uncertainty breeds hesitation. Imagine negotiating with an opponent whose face is unreadable, whose tone reveals nothing, whose eyes betray no fear. Every silence becomes heavy, every gesture loaded with possible meaning. They begin to doubt themselves, to second-guess every move. By showing nothing, you force them to reveal everything. But masking does not mean being emotionless. The skilled ruler knows how to use selective displays of emotion as tools. A carefully timed smile can disarm suspicion. A flash of anger, even if faked, can frighten rivals into submission. A performance of compassion can win loyalty, even if no compassion exists within. The key is control. Never let emotion escape naturally. Always release it deliberately, as an actor controls his lines on stage. Take Joseph Stalin as an example. Though ruthless beyond measure, he often masked his brutality beneath an image of the father of nations. He appeared warm in public, surrounded by children in photographs, projecting an aura of paternal care. Yet behind that mask, he orchestrated purges and terror on an unimaginable scale. The world saw one face, while his enemies saw another too late. His emotional mask was not simply deception, it was dominance. Think also of leaders in business today. A CEO facing a crisis may internally feel panic, but if he reveals it to his employees, the entire organization may collapse in fear. Instead, he projects calm confidence, masking his doubts. The employees draw strength from the illusion, and the company survives. The lesson transcends centuries. Leaders are actors, and masks are their costumes. But here is the dark irony to mask your true intentions. Successfully, you must know yourself better than anyone else. You must recognize every flicker of fear, every surge of pride, every impulse that threatens to escape. Only then can you bury it, conceal it, or transform it into a performance. This is why emotional intelligence is essential, not to be authentic, but to be unreadable, to turn yourself into a mystery that others cannot solve. Ask yourself, how powerful would you be if no one could ever predict your next move? How secure would your position be if your rivals could never see your fear? Never sense your doubt, never know your desires. The ruler who wears the perfect mask becomes a phantom, untouchable, unknowable, unassailable. So the third principle is this: he who hides his true emotions dictates the emotions of others. A ruler's mask is more than a disguise. It is a mirror that reflects back exactly what others need to see, even if it is all a lie. And when you master this art, you no longer simply react to the world, you control how the world reacts to you. But the story does not end here. Masking your emotions may protect you, but the greatest rulers go one step further. They do not merely control themselves or deceive others. They use empathy itself as a weapon to bend, to manipulate, and to dominate. That is the next stage in the arsenal of emotional intelligence. When most people hear the word empathy, they imagine kindness, compassion, and softness. They think of the ability to feel another's pain, to understand their sorrow, to offer comfort. But in the hands of a ruler, empathy is not about kindness, it is about control. To understand what another person feels is to hold the key to their mind. And once you have that key, you can decide whether to unlock them with comfort or lock them in chains of manipulation. This is the paradox of emotional intelligence. Empathy can be the most dangerous tool in a ruler's arsenal. It allows him to step into the hearts of his subjects, his enemies, even his allies, and see the world as they see it. With that knowledge, he can push the right buttons at the right time. A gentle word to calm rebellion, a promise to inflame ambition, a calculated silence to deepen fear. Empathy is not about being loved. It is about knowing exactly which lever to pull. Consider Abraham Lincoln. He was often praised for his empathy, his ability to feel what others felt. But this was not mere sentimentality, it was political genius. He could read the sorrows of a divided nation and use them to craft speeches that united people behind him. His famous words, spoken with deep empathy, were not just emotional, they were strategic. He turned the shared grief of war into a rallying cry for unity. Empathy gave him the ability to dominate the narrative, to transform pain into loyalty. Now contrast this with rulers who lacked empathy entirely. Take Marie Antoinette. When confronted with starving peasants, she allegedly responded with indifference. Let them eat cake. Whether the quote is apocryphal or not, the perception was fatal. She failed to understand the emotional reality of her people, and because of that blindness, she became the symbol of aristocratic arrogance. The guillotine did not punish her for policy alone, but for her inability to empathize with the rage of the masses. Her downfall was not just political, it was emotional. Machiavelli himself warned that a prince must appear compassionate, even if he is not. Well, because people crave recognition of their feelings. They want to be seen, heard, understood. A ruler who can mimic empathy, even if he feels nothing, can win loyalty without giving up power. The act of understanding someone even falsely creates trust. And trust is the most useful leash a ruler can hold. But here lies the darker truth. Empathy does not only soothe it, can also wound. Once you know what someone feels most deeply, you can use it against them. Imagine knowing a rival's greatest insecurity. You can whisper just the right insult to shatter their confidence. Or imagine sensing a subject's greatest hope. You can dangle it before them like bait, keeping them obedient, while they chase a dream you will never deliver. Empathy, in this sense, is not tenderness, it is psychological warfare. Think of Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist. He understood the emotions of the German people, their humiliation after World War I, their fear of poverty, their longing for pride. He weaponized that collective empathy, feeding back their pain in the form of propaganda, twisting it into loyalty to Hitler. Was this empathy in a way? Yes. But it was empathy stripped of compassion and sharpened into a blade. Ask yourself, have you ever revealed your fears or dreams to someone only to see them use that knowledge against you? That is the danger of empathy. When others know what moves you, they can move you at will. But when you, as a ruler, know the emotions of others, you gain invisible chains with which to bind them. So the fourth principle is this: empathy, when stripped of compassion, becomes domination. A ruler who can see through the eyes of others controls not just their actions, but their very hopes and fears. He can offer comfort when it serves him, or strike at the heart when it benefits him. Yet empathy, powerful as it is still limited when applied only to individuals. The greatest rulers learn to expand this art, not just reading and manipulating single people, but entire crowds, nations, and empires. And that leads us to the next level of emotional intelligence, the manipulation of collective emotions, where the masses move not by thought, but by feeling. If empathy allows a ruler to control individuals, then the manipulation of collective emotions allows him to control nations. One person's fear may be inconvenient, but an entire crowd's fear is a weapon. One person's hope may inspire, but an entire people's hope can elevate a ruler to the level of a god. The true masters of power understood that emotions scale, and when they do, they become storms that can either destroy or be directed. A ruler who can harness these storms no longer merely governs. He commands destiny itself. Think of Julius Caesar. His military victories made him powerful. Yes, but his true genius was in orchestrating the emotions of the Roman masses. He staged elaborate games, spectacles, and public feasts, not because he was generous, but because he understood the emotional hunger of the people. Bread and entertainment calmed their fears, satisfied their desires, and made them feel loyal to him. The Senate feared his rise, but the people adored him. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, it wasn't just soldiers who followed him, it was the collective will of Rome, bound to him through emotional mastery. Now contrast this with rulers who failed to manage the emotions of the masses. Consider Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. Detached, cold, and blind to the suffering of his people, he allowed despair and anger to grow unchecked. He could not read the hunger in their bellies or the rage in their voices. The result was the Russian Revolution, a tidal wave of fury that swept him from the throne and into a shallow grave. Nicholas believed ruling was about authority and tradition. He forgot it was about emotion, and emotion crushed him. Crowds are not rational. They do not think, they feel. They do not analyze, they react. Fear, anger, pride, and hope can move them far faster than logic ever could. This is why rulers who manipulate collective emotions wield more power than those who rely on armies alone. Machiavelli himself warned that it is not enough for a prince to control the elite. He must also keep the masses in check. And the masses are controlled not through argument, but through emotion. Take Adolf Hitler as a grim but undeniable example. He understood the collective despair of post-World War I Germany. He sensed the humiliation, the anger, the hunger for identity. With fiery speeches, dramatic gestures, and staged spectacles, he turned those raw emotions into a movement that reshaped a nation. His power was not rooted solely in ideology, it was rooted in the manipulation of mass emotion. He took a wounded people and gave them someone to blame, something to hope for, and something to fear. And with that, he controlled them completely. But manipulation does not always come through fear. Sometimes it is hope that binds people even more strongly. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. His "I Have a Dream" speech did not succeed because of logic or statistics. It succeeded because it tapped into the deep emotional longing for dignity, equality, and justice. Though his methods were moral rather than Machiavellian, the principle remains the same. He mobilized a collective force by speaking to the heart, not the mind. The greatest leaders, whether noble or ruthless, always understood this. To move the crowd, you must stir its emotions. Ask yourself, how often have you seen entire groups, whether nations or small communities, act irrationally when their emotions are inflamed? A rumor sparks panic. A single speech ignites fury. A leader's smile inspires blind loyalty. The collective heart is like dry wood, it needs only a spark to burn. And the ruler who controls that spark controls the fire. This is the fifth principle of emotional intelligence. He who commands the emotions of the masses becomes untouchable. Armies may betray you, advisors may conspire, but when the crowd worships you, you are nearly invincible. Even your enemies will hesitate, knowing that the wrath or devotion of the people can crush them in an instant. Yet this power is not without risk. The same crowd that lifts a ruler to the heavens can drag him into the mud. The same passion that builds a throne can also build a guillotine. To manipulate collective emotions requires precision. Too much fear, and the people may revolt. Too much hope, and they may demand more than you can give. The balance is delicate, but when achieved, it is the closest a ruler comes to absolute power. And so we arrive at the edge of the darkest truth of all. Emotional intelligence, when stretched to its ultimate limit, does not just influence or manipulate it, dominates, corrupts, and destroys. What begins as self-control and empathy ends in total psychological conquest. That is the final stage, the dark edge of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is often praised as the key to harmony, leadership, and compassion. But in the hands of a ruler, stripped of morality, it becomes something darker. It transforms from a tool of understanding into a weapon of domination. The same ability that allows you to comfort someone can also allow you to destroy them from the inside out. And history shows us that many rulers who mastered this art did not stop at control. They used it to crush, to manipulate, and to enslave. Why is emotional intelligence so dangerous? Because it operates invisibly. People recognize brute force. They see armies, they hear threats, they feel chains. But when they are manipulated emotionally, they do not realize they are being conquered. They believe their loyalty is their choice. Their hatred is their conviction. Their despair is their own. A ruler who weaponizes emotional intelligence does not simply win obedience, he wins willing servitude. And willing servitude is the most powerful form of control. Take the example of Mao Zedong. He understood the psychological hunger of the Chinese people, their longing for revolution, unity, and purpose. By positioning himself as the embodiment of those emotions, he bound millions to him, not by chains, but by belief. Yet that belief blinded them to famine, suffering, and purges. Emotional intelligence, in this case, did not heal it enslaved. It made people sacrifice themselves willingly, all while praising the very man who orchestrated their suffering. Or consider the chilling charisma of cult leaders. They master emotional intelligence, not for empathy, but for domination. By identifying the insecurities, fears, and hopes of their followers, they construct an illusion of safety, belonging, and purpose. Followers hand over their freedom convinced they are being understood. In reality, they are being drained of autonomy. Is this not the darkest use of emotional intelligence to turn human vulnerability into a prison? Even in smaller arenas of power, the same principle applies. A cunning manipulator in politics, business, or personal relationships can exploit emotional awareness to keep others dependent. They give just enough kindness to inspire loyalty, just enough fear to maintain obedience, and just enough hope to prevent rebellion. The victim rarely realizes they are trapped until it is too late. The ruler smiles, and the subject believes. The ruler frowns, and the subject trembles, all without a sword being drawn. Ask yourself, is this truly leadership, or is it psychological tyranny? When emotional intelligence is stripped of compassion, it becomes nothing less than mind control. It robs people not only of their freedom to act, but of their freedom to feel. And once a ruler dictates both action and emotion, he holds a power far greater than armies. He holds dominion over the soul. This is why emotional intelligence carries a dangerous paradox. It is the very skill that can build a nation or destroy it, inspire hope or unleash terror, unite people or enslave them. It is the ruler's secret weapon, but also his potential curse. For once you begin to manipulate emotions without restraint, you risk being consumed by the very illusions you create. Many tyrants believed their emotional mastery made them untouchable, only to be destroyed when the masses finally saw through the mask. The sixth and final principle is this: emotional intelligence without morality becomes the most ruthless form of power. It seduces without force, enslaves without chains, and kills without blood. It is the invisible dagger of the ruler feared, because it cannot be seen, resisted, or escaped. And so we stand at the edge of a chilling truth. Emotional intelligence is not simply a gift. It is a double-edged blade. In the hands of the wise, it can heal and inspire. In the hands of the ruthless, it can dominate and destroy. Which side of the blade will you wield? Power is not forged only in battlefields or written in laws. The true battlefield is the human heart, and emotional intelligence is the weapon that wins it. We have seen how rulers who mastered themselves became untouchable, how those who read emotions predicted destiny, how masks concealed truth, how empathy turned into domination, and how the manipulation of collective emotions created empires. Yet we have also seen the darker edge, when emotional intelligence becomes tyranny, when it enslaves minds rather than liberates them. The lesson is clear: armies may conquer lands, but emotions conquer people. A ruler who wields emotional intelligence rules not just by force, but by invisible strings tied to the deepest fears, hopes, and desires of others. This is why the greatest leaders in history were not always the strongest, but the most emotionally perceptive. They could read the crowd, hide their weaknesses, project strength, and bend hearts to their will. But beware, the same skill that makes you untouchable can also corrupt you. The mask can become the face, the performance, the reality, and the weapon, the curse. The question is not whether you will use emotional intelligence. The question is how. If you found these lessons valuable, leave a comment with your thoughts, subscribe for more, and share this with someone who seeks to understand the hidden mechanics of power. And prepare yourself, for in the next video, we will uncover another weapon of rulers, the terrifying silence that commands more than words ever could.